This is the first assignment in AEDD 105, the line assignment, and what you're going to do is what you see on the right. You're going to draw a series of lines, starting with the center line at the bottom and going to visible lines. But you're not just drawing lines, you're also going to set up layers so that you have line types and line weights that are correct. The line types of the characteristics of the line that showed you little breaks sometimes, that's called a line type. Line weight is whether it's a thick line or a thin line. You're also going to draw these accurately, an accurate length. You're going to put them an accurate distance apart. And in order to do all of this, we're going to have to create layers, and those layers are going to have the characteristics of the line types that we want. So starting at AutoCAD, we're just going to start a new drawing. We'll go down below and pick ACAD.dwt, which is the imperial drawing. I don't care for that grid, so I'm going to press the F7 key and get rid of it. That nav cube is also going to get in our way since it's not a 3D drawing, so I'm just going to type nav cube at the command line. As I do, you'll notice every command starting with NAV shows up, so I can just pick it without having to type the whole thing. I'm going to turn that off. Now I'm going to start by making layers, and if I go to the top ribbon and pick layer properties, I get the layer properties manager. When I hit the layer properties manager, what I'm going to do is create some new layers, and the layer names I'm going to use are the same names as the line type names. Now let me just get my magnifier up. There are some icons at the top of the layer manager, and those icons represent different things you can do with layers. Right now we're going to create layers, and so layer new right here, I'm going to select that, and then we're going to make some new layers. Now in order to do that, layer 0 is a default layer, that's always there, but if I go to layer new, it tries to give me a layer named layer 1. I'm just going to type center as a new layer that I want. Now if you look over on the right hand side, it tells me the center line type has to also be blue, and it also has to have a center 2 line type. So we'll go back over here and I'll pick the color swatch, which is currently set to white, which is black because the background is white. Always use index colors. I'm going to come down here, I'm going to pick the blue. That'll assign it when I pick OK to the center layer. Now I want to change the line type. If I go to continuous, I only have one line type available to me, and that one line type is continuous because that's the only one that's currently loaded. AutoCAD has dozens of line types, and what you want to do is load the ones you're going to use, and the one I want to use right now is center 2. I'm going to go down here to the load button, and now you see all the line types you can see here. We're looking over here at the line types it tells us to use in center 2, phantom 2, dot 2, and hidden 2. So I'm going to go and load all of them right now. First I'm going to start with the center 2. I'm going to pick that one. And I'm going to hold my control key down. I'm going to go down to hidden 2 with the control key held down. I went right by dot 2, which I need, so I'll do that with the control key down. And then I go down to phantom 2 with the control key held, and then I'm just going to pick OK. And now all of those line types have been loaded because we're going to use all of them. In this case, I now need to select center 2 and say assign that to the center layer. So now I have center as the name, blue as the color, center 2 as the line type. Line weight, it tells me to use the default because center lines are thin, and the default is 0.25 millimeters. That's a thin line. So we're all set here. Now I'm going to make another layer, and then I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to finish making layers, and then I'll come back. But the next layer I'm going to make is the one called chain. And if you take a look at it, the chain layer is going to be a line type of center 2, but it's going to be thick, and it's not going to be colored blue, it's going to be colored cyan. I go back over here, pick that. I'm going to type in, chain. I'm going to come over to the blue swatch, and I'm going to change it now to cyan, which is a subtractive color. Center 2 is already the right line type, so we're going to leave it. Under the line, I forgot to pick OK. And when I come back over here to line weight, I'm going to come over, and instead of the default, which is 0.25, I'm going to go down and pick 0.5, and then we'll assign that. So now we have two layers that have different colors, different line types, and different line weights. You're going to do all your line types based on what that handout shows you. Right now I'm going to press the pause button, and then I'm going to do all that, and I'll come back. So now I have all the layers set. So I just named those layers same way I did the other two. Assigned colors as indicated in the handout, assigned line types as indicated, and assigned line weights as indicated. Get rid of my magnifier for now. Okay, what I'm going to do is close the layer palette, and now we'll do some lines. Now if you look over here, the bottom line is center, and it says to start it at 0, 0. A couple ways to, well, there's several ways to the line command. One is just to go up here and select that, and now at the prompt it's asking me for a start point. Because I'm not using dynamic input, I can type in 0, 0 as an absolute coordinate, and it goes right to that little icon right there. Now I want to draw a horizontal line. I'm going to move my cursor till I get a tracking line. You can see the tracking line going off to the right. It tells me that it's an angle of 0. I now type a 10, and it makes a line that's exactly 10 units long. I'll zoom in on it a little bit so we can see it a little better. Now that line is on layer 0. If I want it on the center layer, I can select it, come up here, and I can go over down here and pick center, and now it has the characteristics of the center line layer. Now I'm going to do a few other lines. Go back in the line command, hover over this, go straight up again, 0.75 this time. Now I'm hovering over the end. By hovering over the end, I've acquired the endpoint, and my tracking line lines right up with the endpoint of that first line. By having the tracking line showing and then typing a value, when I press enter, the start point of my next line is exactly 0.75 above the endpoint of the first line. I get my tracking line again. I look down and it's 9.313 is the length of that line, and I draw that. Now I can go back in the line command simply by pressing enter or the space bar. That'll repeat my last command. Now I can hover over the endpoint again. I acquire that point because there's a little cross that you can see in there. Type the 0.75 again. This third line is 6.875. Looks like that. Now these are all on layer 0, and they are going to be on layer 0 until I change them. So if I pick that one and say this is a chain line, let's put on the chain line layer. Take that one. That is a cutting plane line. Let's put on the cutting plane layer. Yeah. Now these line types are correct, but the line weights aren't showing yet, and that's because I haven't turned line weight on. Most people, when they work in AutoCAD, work with the line weights turned off, so all the lines are thin. What I'm going to do is turn the line weights on, and you can see that I have 2 thick lines, 1 thin line. Now I'll turn it back off. Once again, I'm going to, before I pause the video though, let me put a dimension in here. If you look at the instructions, it tells you to use the DLI, that's what it shows right up here, DLI alias, which stands for dim linear. I can type that at the keyboard, and it issues a dim linear command, dimension linear, straight line. I can also go up to the ribbon, and on the ribbon there's a dimension tool, but right to the right of it is the linear dimension tool. I would pick that one instead, and then just follow the instructions. Now because running object snaps are turned on, if I come down near this line, as a green box is going to show up, and that green box represents the endpoint of that line, and it tells me that. If while I'm seeing that green box, I press the left button on the mouse, I will snap directly to the end of that line. Now I come back over here, I want to do the same thing, and when I come over here and do the same thing, I'm sitting on top of that box, left click, now I want to bring this up here. Now I can put this anywhere I want it, but the instructions say the dimension line should be 3/4 of an inch away from the line we're dimensioning. So I'm going to move my mouse without selecting anything with the mouse buttons. I'm going to hover over that endpoint, go straight up, type 0.75. Now the dimension line is exactly 0.75 above that line. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this once again so the video is not so long, and I'm going to draw the other lines and then put them on their right layers so they're the right line types, and then I'll show you what the next step in this assignment is. So now I've got all the lines on the right layers. If I go and turn the line weights on, you'll see that some of them are thick, some of them are thin. I'm going to turn my line weights back off again. Now you've got a few other things you need to do, and one of them is you need to put some text above each line. In order to do that, it tells you to use the style command to create a text style called Romanesque. Now again, you can type all of these commands at the keyboard, and I could type style. In fact, I could type ST for the alias for style, and then the style for text comes up. You do, though, have tools on the ribbon, and there is a text tool here. And if you look at that text tool and go to the drop down, it shows you that you can do 2 different kinds of text. If under annotation you pick that button, it also shows you that you can go and take a look at the style that's currently set, which is standard, always a bad name for everything, and then pick down here manage text styles, and that'll give you the same thing I just had by typing ST. We're going to make a new text style. It's called Roman S. That just names it. It doesn't change what it looks like. Fonts determine what something looks like. The name of a style could be anything you want. If I come over here, Roman S is actually currently based on the Arial font. But I'm going to make that current. I'm going to change the font from Arial, and I'm just going to type in R. It goes down to the R's. I find romanes.shx. That's what I want. I apply it and I close it. Now I have a text font that I can use. Now I'm going to put some text here. And what it's telling you to do is to put in the text that describes the line type, also happens to be the layer, and has the length of the line in inches, followed in square brackets by the length of the line in millimeters. So how do you do that? Well, put a little note right here, and I'm going to erase it. There are 25.4 millimeters in every inch. So we have down here, I'm going to put the text. And by the way, I can go up here and get the text and make single line text, or I can type in DT. I'm going to hover over the endpoint. I'm going to move it up a little bit so it starts 1/10 of an inch above. And now it's asking me for my text height. I'm going to type 0.12 for my text height. And the rotation angle is always going to be 0 if you want it horizontal. So I'm going to type center as my line type, put a few spaces in, then type 10.00. 10 times 25.4 is 200 square bracket, 254 millimeters. So that one is pretty easy to do. That's what I want these to look like. Now, what's the rest of this going to look like? It depends on the length. This next length is 9.313. So if I were to open up my calculator and I come over here and type 9.313 multiplied times 25.4 millimeters per inch equals 236.5502. Now I'm going to right click here, select all, right click again and copy it. Now I just minimize that. So let me put the text for this next line, which is a chain line. I'm going to go back to the text command. I'm going to hover over the endpoint. I'm going to go up 0.1. That's just a little space below the text. 0.12 is the default now, so I'll just press enter. 0 is the default, I'll press enter. And I will type chain. And then the length of that is 9.313. We'll put a square bracket there. And now I'm going to paste. Control C. Just paste that value in, or right click, paste. And then I'm going to put the square bracket. So that, oh, by the way, I want that to say millimeters just so you know the difference. So we'll put that in here like that. Now you're going to do this for everything else all the way up through. Now, what else is left to do? Well, there's one thing left to do here. And that one thing left to do is to modify the dimension style. And it tells you to do that on the handout as well. To modify that dimension style, I need to go to the Dimension Style Manager. Now, DIM will bring up the Dimension Style Manager, which looks like, well, this is really interesting. This is one of the reasons why it's important when you have a new release of software to try the software out. This is AutoCAD 2021. For the entire time that AutoCAD has had aliases, which has been since 1985, DIM would bring up the Dimension Style Manager. It no longer does that. Now it brings up a general dimensioning tool. So don't type dim to get the Dimension Style Manager. You can type dim style if you want. I don't know if maybe something like, no, oh, DST. DST is now the alias instead of dim. So DST will bring it up. That's what we're looking for. You can also get it by going into the ribbon under annotation. The first one is the text annotation. The second one is dimension annotation. If you go to the drop down, you can pick manage dimension, then you'll get the same thing. So the handout is now incorrect. We'll have to fix that. This is one of the things about teaching software that changes every year. Once in a while they change something so fundamental that it surprises me. And this is not the first time. So first thing I'm going to do over here, it's not required for this assignment, but standard is always a bad name for anything in AutoCAD. So I'm going to change that to Imperial. Is that right? Yeah. And then I'm going to modify. And the modifications that it says to make here, the text. says instead of using standard for the text for font, the text style for the dimension, instead use Roman S. And I am going to do that. It's going to change the way the text looks on the dimension that I just put there. But I'm also going to change the text height to 0.12 so it matches the text height of everything else. And while I'm at it, I'll change the arrow size to 0.12 as well. Now when I come back out, you'll notice this dimension that you can see right here behind there. When I pick close, it changes, so now it matches more what we have here. That's what you need to do for this assignment. And then when you're done, check and make sure by turning on your line weights that you have the line weights done correctly as well. When all the text is on here, everything's ready to go. Go and save the drawing, and you're going to save it with your initials, first initial, last initial, dash 01A, which is the name of the worksheet. I already did this once, so we're going to do that. Then you can upload that file. That's the first assignment.